Welcome. Hi. My name is Oko. I'm a senior director at Techstars, based out of London. Happy to be here. This is my fourth or fifth time in UAE. I'm happy to be here doing a fireside chat with my colleague Andres here, who I will introduce very soon. We are from Techstars. We're partnering with Hub 71 from this cohort on, helping and supporting the company building program here. Some of our cohorts are here, incredible. And as part of the program, we get to bring in amazing speakers from all over the world who are investors, experts in their industries, founders who have had some amazing experiences. And our first speaker is Andres, all the way from Miami. So he had to fly 15 hours to get here. So let's make sure we use this time, grill him, ask all the questions you need to ask. He will say no to some questions, maybe, yeah, depending. But yes, that's us. And then a little bit about Techstars, if you guys don't know. Techstars is a global accelerator, 14 years old now. We have over 3,700 companies in the portfolio, about $100 billion in valuation of those companies. We run 54 accelerators around the world, which means last year we invested in 600 companies. That's the number, yes? 600 companies, and that's going to continue growing, hopefully 800 companies this year. Like I mentioned earlier, we're very happy to be here partnering with Hub 71. We also run Early Childhood Authority program out of UAE as well. So let's jump into the questions. Andres, 150 companies, is that right?
Yep, I've invested and created, when I combine them together, 150 companies. I started in 2005 when I was 18 years old. So it's not that I am getting old, but it is the mileage, not the years. Yeah.
You look good. It's okay.
Thank you.
Yes. I did see his video. If you guys Google his name, you'll see 18-year-old version of him. He looks like those kid geniuses. In fact, there were articles, I think, referring you as. So 150 companies, can you explain a little bit more about, when did that journey start? That's as an investor, right? And that's now part of what you do as well?
Yeah, I started as an investor 10 years ago. And that's after I had created 2 venture-backed companies. And I wanted to be the investor I wish I would have had. The one that when things go poorly can provide more than just obvious advice and generic strategic advice, and actually roll up their sleeves and help you in the trenches. So in 2013, I became an investor full-time. I bootstrapped that, invested in about 4 companies before I ran out of money, and then I was able to convince development banks to pay operating costs, raise a small fund, and invested in about 85 companies before joining Techstars in 2020 as managing director, managing the Boulder program, and now more recently the Miami program.
Yeah, so when you say I'm a managing director of Miami program, what does it entail?
So we invest in the accelerator programs. How many programs did you say we have? 55? That's a lot. I run one of them, and I invest in 24 companies a year. So out of thousands of applications, I select 12 per class twice a year. And the focus of my program specifically is helping companies get to product market fit faster. And that is because I realized when I was an entrepreneur and starting in the investment world, that you can have a company that raises a lot of money and still never gets to product market fit. So in my program, we split up raising money separate from getting to product market fit, and success for me and the founders I work with is helping more companies get to product market fit faster, because even the successful companies, which is a very small number of companies that actually get to product market fit, they can take 3 to 5 years to get there. We try to reduce that to a few months during the program that we run.
All right, we're going to go back to that product market fit and what do you do. But before that, let's go back to Boy Genius. Can you tell us a little bit about your first venture maybe, and then give background as a founder and venture builder?
Yeah, the first venture-backed company that I created, I was 18 years old. I was in college, And because I had no experience with anything and no network and no capital, I had no mental blockers. I didn't know that some things were not supposed to be done or were not supposed to be done in a certain way. So I decided in 2006 to start a company doing music streaming. We were, I think, a predecessor to Spotify. I think they started around the same time, but we launched before they did. And we reached around 35 million monthly subscribers or users back in the early days, 2009, 2010, when streaming was barely getting there. And that's before we opened up the floodgates of litigation with the record labels, because at the time, they were a little bit more conservative with innovation. And that was my first company. I started by joining an industry I knew nothing about. And I think to an extent that helped me do some things without fear, but I also learned from mistakes that throughout the years, I think have about $100 million worth of mistakes that I now help founders not make. So yeah.
And since then, how many startups have you failed and succeeded?
Oh man. I think, so I've done 3 venture-backed companies. I've probably done 6 other experiments that were not venture-backed. So yeah, at least 10 altogether, and a few exits along the way.
Speaking of mistakes, looking back at those 10 companies, which one is the one that makes you go, ugh?
Oh, I think the most...
A little more detail, please.
Yeah, I think the most vivid mistake in my head in terms of recency and that it was so easily avoided, surprisingly, it is not avoiding litigation with the record labels. The more ardent mistake was when I decided that it was okay to rewrite the code of our company, because then it was really going to be able to scale. There is a great article by Steve Blank titled Startup Suicide, which basically says, don't rewrite the code. I read that article, but I was young and I was foolish, and I thought, yeah, sure, but that doesn't apply to me. Many times you hear advice and you think, yeah, but that doesn't apply to me. Or sometimes I hear founders say, Andres, it's not that simple. I am not some consumer app. This is way more complicated. Or they tell me, I'm not just a B2B app. This is a consumer app. Like, everybody has an excuse of why they're unique and different and why this deadly mistake is not going to be a mistake for them. And so we decided to rewrite the code, and I was okay with it because it was only going to take 2 months. 6 months later, when you stop growth to rewrite the code so that then you can grow, well, you stop growing. And your rate of growth, your KPI rate of growth, which we talked about earlier in the workshop, is your heartbeat. When your company's heartbeat, which is growth of your key indicator, stops, nothing else matters. That company's dying. So we were fixing a broken arm, but we stopped the heart. And so a very large company that could have acquired us in the advertising and search space didn't, because we stopped growing. Oh, but we had beautiful code. And that mistake came as a sequence of little mistakes along the line, including thinking that you can hire C-level executives to help get you to product market fit or to solve the problems that you have. And so we would bring C-level executives from the top brand name companies, encouraged by our VCs, thinking that was going to solve the problem. That doesn't solve the problem. And eventually, because the talent that we were bringing on is talent that had the experience scaling companies that already had product market fit, they thought, hey, this thing that we've done for a decade, very successful professionals, does not apply before you have product market fit. Only the founders, and barely, have the ability to get to product market fit. Anything before that is premature scaling. And so that is the reason why I did not make $80 million. So today I'm $80 million poorer because we decided to rewrite the code.
What was your sort of hypothesis behind we need to make this beautiful besides being asked to scale? I mean, there might have been different options in front of you at that point.
It was poorly written, the software. It broke easily. But it worked. And so these seasoned executives that knew how to scale things said, no, this is gonna keep breaking. Unless we stop to then grow, it's just never gonna work. But you can't stop the heart. So what I learned at that point is rather than rewrite, just do small improvements in week-long experiments, which is something that I had originally learned in my first company, the music streaming service, because we spent $700,000 over a year building my vision of the product. And sometimes vision gets in the way of getting to product market fit. It did everything I could imagine. And we launched it, nobody cared. Nobody used it. It was a smaller version created by, not me, but a small group of engineers with very little direction. Then rather than doing the fancy thing of a music streaming service, you have playlists, you have users, you have all that, they just put a search box, you search one song, and you get the result of the song, and you click play, and that's it. That's all it does. And you can share it. That's what took off. Millions of users. We could have done that a year earlier. But no, my vision got in the way. My ego got in the way. And so I had thought I learned that lesson, and so when I created the company, the more recent company, actually a company I went through Techstars New York as a founder, the first version we built in 3 weeks and $700. We made $5,000 after 3 weeks. Now we could pay for internet and food. Great, we kept going, we raised money, we got into Techstars. But that's where the premature scaling came in. You got into Techstars, you raised $6 million at demo day. Great, now scale. And I forgot the lesson of before, building something that people did not want.
But I would assume that if you're growing, and yes, the tech was broken, you're saying kind of slowly fix it up, but at some point you probably would have had to face redoing the whole thing, kind of paying the debt.
But not all at once. Because once you stop, the heart stops, right? So you can still take elements of it and improve it, small elements. We did rewrite once, but it was one aspect of it, not the whole thing. We didn't stop everything. It was just one little thing, one at a time. And the technical debt was still there. It's fine to have debt if you pay it off slowly, but not all at once.
Got it. I am just pointing out that I'm asking questions from Andres from a founder's perspective. That's what this session is primarily for, so bear with me. I will allow some time at the end for you guys to ask questions, so if you have questions from kind of investor perspective and other, you'll get an opportunity. So please, yes. Let's go to a product market fit, since that was also kind of connected to that. You've invested in over 150 companies. When you are about to invest in these companies and you meet these companies, how many of them realistically are at or have found product market fit?
Very few companies, and I have actually rejected companies that are making millions of dollars in revenue, but they don't have product market fit, and I reject them from the program. At the same time, I accept companies that have no revenue, do not have product market fit, and they get into the program. I've even accepted companies that raise $3 million. They don't have product market fit, and they get into a program. So it is not a factor of traction. It is not a factor of how much money have you raised, how many downloads you have, how much revenue do you have. The way that I select companies after having been doing this for 10 years and having different approaches to selecting companies is nowadays I only look at 3 things. The first one, it is how much of a deep understanding of the customer pain does the founder have? I tend to select founders that have, for some extraordinary reason, some weird freak reason, understand the pain better than anybody else. And that's usually because they live the problem and they have done a ton of customer discovery interviews or talking to prospective customers about their problem. And they found a unique insight of a segment that has the problem, knows they have the problem, they've quantified the problem, they're going to do something about it. That's step one, deep understanding of customer pain. Step two is an extraordinary ability to execute quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that you nailed it, or you have growth, you have traction, you have expansion, you have exponential growth. No, it's just that if I have two companies, one company is going to take 4 months to run one experiment, and the other company can run one experiment in a week, I'm going to select the one that can run an experiment in a week. So we have deep understanding of customer pain and ability to execute quickly. And the third and last option, or criteria, is a company that is able to generate $1 billion in revenue at some point in the future. They have the chance. Are they going to make it? Probably not. But they have a path there. Low probability, but it's a possibility. Now, the reason why the first two are extremely important is if you have a deep understanding of customer pain and you're able to execute quickly, it is more likely that you're going to get to product market fit before you give up or run out of money. You can run out of money and still not give up, and you have a higher chance of getting to product market fit. However, if you don't have a deep understanding of customer pain, it's going to take you longer to understand that pain. It is too early for you to join my program. If you're slow at executing because maybe you have outsourced the software engineering, or for some reason it takes you longer to run experiments, you will probably run out of money or give up before you get to product market fit.
Have you seen a correlation between funding stage and these, when these criteria are still relevant?
I have more recently, I guess in the last 2 years, came to the conclusion that fundraising and company building, like actually building a product people want and generating value to users that retain and expand, are loosely correlated. And it's not intuitive because founders think, and especially because the investors tell them, oh, we'd love to see a little bit more traction. And when it comes to pre-seed, it's even more interesting because pre-seed investors will say to you, we'd love to see more validation. We'd love to see more traction. Let me know when you have revenue. You already have revenue? Let me know when you're making $50,000 a month, $100,000 a month. And then you see in TechCrunch the next day, that same investor is leading around for a pre-product, pre-revenue company. It is not a sequential thing. They're telling you those things because they're skeptical. And they want to buy free time, free for them, expensive for you, to not give you a decision. And they're going to prioritize the other company. And so the fundraising process is a process. It is different from getting to product market fit or getting traction, even though you're led to believe that if you just do this one thing, you can raise money. It's unrelated, at least in the early stages. And I think we've seen in 2022, 2023, that it is so unrelated that ridiculous companies raise hundreds of millions of dollars with nothing to show for it. And those companies are laying people off or shutting down altogether. That's because they had the right process, they had the right network, they had the right pedigree. And at the same time, there are companies that might have traction, might have revenue, might even have product market fit, but they don't run the process of fundraising as its own business, and they're not able to raise money. So I don't see in any stage that a company, if they do this, if they get to product market fit, they raise that round. And the expectation before 2022 was that maybe you get to product market fit at a Series B. Now, because there's such a lack of funding, now they're looking for product market fit at a Series A. But you can get there earlier. You can get there at a pre-seed by focusing on the users that have retention and expansion of use. You can have product market fit with 5 users, and that's okay. And you'll have a different story for investors. So separate those out.
When you say, I met a lot of founders. I don't think founders come to an investor, whether they're asking for pre-seed, seed, or A or B, saying, hey, I don't have product market fit. Everybody thinks they have product market fit, and that's why they're still there. What's your immediate sort of telltale sign when you are looking at founders?
Well, I specifically look for founders that are pre-product market fit. And if you're conscious that you don't have product market fit, it is going to be more likely that you're going to be self-aware enough to strive towards product market fit versus growth at all costs. So if you're a founder, if you're a founder that thinks you have product market fit but you don't, and I'll tell you how to figure that out, I probably don't want to work with you because it's going to take forever to convince you that you don't have product market fit and that you have to lay off a bunch of people and stop doing a lot of the motion that you're doing so that you can actually accomplish progress, because progress and motion are not the same thing. And it just takes too long. I would rather work with the founder that says, I don't have product market fit, I'm here because I want the help. Or there's founders that already have product market fit and want to expand it, because you can have product market fit for a segment, but you want to expand to a different segment so you can keep growing. The ones that have product market fit, there's a quantitative approach and a qualitative approach. The qualitative approach is what you typically see in the blog posts out there and the YouTube videos. You know you have product market fit when you see it, when you have it. If you have to ask, you don't have it. The other one I've seen is feels like stepping on a landmine. That's like a terrible analogy, but they use it. Another one is you have product market fit when there's a line outside your office of customers wanting to use your product, and there's another line of investors wanting to give you money. I don't think that's enough, because I've seen plenty of lines of investors wanting to give money to a company that certainly does not have product market fit. I will probably not get there. The quantitative approach, which is the approach that I like to use, is retention and expansion of use per cohort. There's an intermediary one that depends on surveys. I'm not a fan of that one, but I'll share it in case you want to use it, which is a survey that asks, how disappointed would you be if X went away? That's okay. If you don't have data, you cannot look at behavior, then you can use a survey. I am personally not a fan of surveys, but it says that if 40% of people would be very disappointed, you have product market fit. I disagree. The way that I look at it is, if you have a cohort organized by the moment that they became a customer or they generated that aha moment for you, and maybe 100 people started using your service 12 months ago, and after 12 months, one of them, out of the 100 people, one of them keeps using it, well, you don't have product market fit as a company. You do not have product market fit with the 99 that stopped using your product, but you have product market fit with that one. And from that one, you can look at other users that have the same characteristics, prospects that have the same characteristics, so you can acquire users that behave like that one that you have, so that your next cohort, out of 100 people that you bring on, or 50 users that you bring on, 5 will survive. The next cohort, it will be 10 that will survive. The next cohort, it will be 90% of them survive. So when you have that retention, that and expansion of use, so they use your product, they keep using your product, but as time goes on, they use your product even more, that is when you have exponential growth with retention and expansion of use, which is different from growth that is through pure acquisition and losing users. So when you have retention, expansion of use per cohort over time, gives you exponential growth. That is the quantitative way to measure product market fit.
Such a nerdy answer.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Earlier today, you ran workshop with our cohort, and one of the questions was, should the founders be doing all this nerdy data and quantitative approach to simple thing as my vision, is it true or not? Or should there be a dedicated person? It seems like according to you, or what you expect from founders you invest in, you expect founders from the beginning to have this data-driven mindset.
Look, I'm a political science major, not the economics track. I did the comparative policy, the one with the least amount of math. I got kicked out of engineering because I was so bad at math. But the same way that a founder should be able to look at a financial statement, even if you don't have an MBA, and understand it. Or you should be able to have a conversation with marketing and you know how to buy ads and how to do PR. Or you can be somewhat competent with Figma. I expect that the founders are going to have an understanding of every area of their company. If my life depended on it, I can code, I can design, I can do PR, I can do marketing, I can do legal. Well, no, I had to because of litigation with the record labels, but I've also noticed that founders delegate 100% of their legal contracts to their outside legal firm, or they never understand it. And if they read it, they would probably have the answer, and they wouldn't have to go ask their lawyer that charges $1,200 an hour. Like, oh, what is double trigger acceleration? It's in the contract. So read every contract, you understand it, you still use your law firm, but you understand what's going on in every aspect of the business. And when it comes to the data science aspect of it, you can understand it and delegate it eventually when you're big enough, but you need to be able to do it yourself in the beginning, at the most shallow level, so that when you do hire somebody, you don't make the mistake that I did of, here's an executive, they know more than I do, yeah, sure, do whatever you need, here's your budget, spend a bunch of money, don't get us anywhere, let's rewrite the code and lose me $80 million. Don't do that. So you have to figure it out first, and then you're gonna hire somebody who's gonna do better than you. But the original recipe, you build it. You have the original recipe and then you delegate it. But don't trust that somebody else is gonna figure it out for you.
So you really believe in chief everything officer approach. That's tough. I've met many founders who authentically, genuinely, they do care about PMF, but they're often confused. By the time they've asked this question themselves, the features have now gotten into hundreds of versions, and it's confusing which signals to look at. There's a lot of false positives, right? Any comments on that?
There's usually one event that occurs. If it's a coffee shop, the events are opening the door, going to the barista, making an order. Those are events. Everything that happens is an event. But there's usually an event that is the aha moment. The event that generates the value for your user. And the more that event occurs, the more users retain. So to simplify and so that you're not confused, you want to look at that event, which we'll call the key performance indicator, the big one. And we're going to measure that week over week, month over month if your team is too big. But if your team is small, week over week. And that should be growing exponentially every week. If you grow 2% a week, every week, that is exponential growth. If you add 2 users per week, that is not exponential growth. So you want that to grow exponentially. That's the first level of sophistication. Then the second level of sophistication is you want that growth to be based on retention and expansion of use, not only on acquisition. Because it is very addictive to pay for buying a bunch of users in the beginning that you lose, and then each new cohort becomes more expensive, and then newer cohort becomes more expensive, and it gets really expensive right around the time that you're raising your next round, so then your growth looks flat, and it looks terrible. And that's when the fundraising becomes difficult. It's because you burned through the initial cohort just acquiring crazy.
Got it. So let's switch to sort of being investor in this case, because I'm assuming that if I'm a founder and I'm confused like that, I would love to have someone like you on my side to point out and slap me basically.
Yes,
Say,
symbolically.
Yeah. Well, maybe the other way too. But essentially pointing out that look, you lost what you had, the pain that you felt in the beginning. You're lost in your vision right now. But I also hear so many investors say exactly the same thing as you do, which is like, I don't want to be that investor, every other investor that just gives you money and pushes you in the wrong direction. I want to be a good investor. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it is, I do this experiment a bit with VCs that I meet for the first time. And I ask them, just so that I have an understanding of how I should present you to founders in my portfolio and tell them that they should go work with you, I have a question for you, a hypothetical question for you. Imagine that a round is oversubscribed. There's more capital being offered to that founder than what that company can actually take. How do you convince them to take your money? One of my favorite answers is, oh, and I don't compete for deals. I get the best deals every single time. They want to work with me. And if everybody's saying that, mathematically, at least a few of them are incorrectly informed or lying to themselves. But then I push further. Okay, cool. So what else do you do? And then I get, well, our network. Our network is great. And we're very hands-on. But everybody says this. And then they say, well, we're founder-friendly, until they remove the founders from the company, which has happened to me. So when I decided I wanted to be an investor, I did customer discovery. And I asked founders, what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing right now? And everybody says capital. Okay, you can get that out of the way. Here's the handbook, here's the manual, how to run the process, introductions. That's table stakes. Any of your investors should be able to help you to raise the next round of funding. You need everybody's help. Then the next thing they said is, oh, I need talent. I raised the money, and I need to hire engineers. I became really good at recruiting software engineers as an investor. That was half of my job, was doing barbecues with engineers, inviting them to birthday parties, going to their birthday party, like doing the whole thing just so I could have a network of engineers and place them. Something else that entrepreneurs would say is, oh, I need help growing. So I became really good at public relations, getting them on the front page of whatever journal or newspaper that was relevant for them. But they were still not being successful. They would grow, they would be oversubscribed, they'd have the great engineering team. They still wouldn't get to product market fit. So that's when I became obsessed with, all right, let me just help you get to product market fit. But when they initially come to me, I tell them what they usually think they need. Fundraising, great, I can help you with fundraising. Recruiting, sure, I can help you with recruiting. Once I invest, it's like, great, we can help you with that, but that's not your problem. Here's your real problem. You have a leaky bucket. Let's work on that. The problem is, you probably don't want to hear that, because that is calling your baby ugly. That is me giving you vegetables, and you came for a burger and a milkshake, and I'm here, have some broccoli. And the very difficult aspect of it is this feeling of loss. Not of being lost, but loss as if you lost somebody, because you've spent a very long time building something that has become your alter ego. And in essence, what I'm telling you is your alter ego needs to die. Everything you've been working on, your startup, everything you think you're doing right, not everything, most of it, we need to start over. So it is a feeling of sadness, first denial, then sadness. I forget the steps, right? Like negotiation, like, and eventually they're like, okay, I'm ready to do customer discovery, look at the data, and put away my alter ego, put away my idea of what people should want, and rather give them what they need and what they want. And that's when it starts taking off. Typically coincides when they're running out of money. when they raise a bunch of money from a $100 billion, $1 trillion fund, they're like, oh, Andres, you don't know what you're talking about. But then when they laid off people, they're like, oh, Andres, you're right. When they have 3 months of runway, okay, so how do we do this customer discovery thing again? Usually requires some of that.
And when you go through that stage of, oh my gosh, what I've been lying to myself and to my team, and we've been spending and investing all this energy into this thing, it's really hard. And then one of the things you could use at that point is having somebody with you, right? If you are there to point out and guide them.
Because it's not just pointing it out, right? Now let's do it.
Yeah.
I was mentioning earlier that I would have board members saying, hey, Andres, in the board meeting, right? Like, we're really struggling. Things are not working. We're trying everything. And we had a board member saying, well, have you guys thought about just sell more? Oh, you know what? Brilliant. Yes, hadn't thought of that. We're going to work on it. Yeah, but how? The question is, yeah, but how? Talk to customers. Yeah, but how? Choose the best investors for your company, the ones that add the most value. Yeah, but how? Right? Get to product market fit. Yeah, but how? Right? So that how is, and this sounds like a commercial, is what we do at Techstars. So that's what we help you with, and that's why we become kind of like your junior co-founder to help you get there with the how.
One of the questions I like to ask founders when I first meet them is you kind of engage into talking about their issues they're facing, many of which is about product. The question is, when you are in doubt or when you don't know what to do next, what's your system? What do you do? What's your principle, so to speak, right? And I try to understand, who do you talk to? Who's your go-to? Who's your community? Who's your backup?
And actually, so again, not to sound like too commercial, but that's the reason of having a mentorship-driven accelerator is that the mentors will provide you perspective. They won't have the answer. Most of the time, they don't have the answer. But they'll give you all the points of view that maybe you weren't seeing. Or if you're a Marvel fan, like I am a Marvel fan, it's like Doctor Strange seeing the 14,000 combinations of how it could go. So only one of them works. But you have to be the one figuring out which that one is. We provide the points of view for you to make the decisions, and then we help you with the how for you to make your own decisions. And something that I have in my program, for example, is because this is building a company is not just building a company. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you grow as a person, and it's extremely challenging. We have a coach in residence. And so there's the managing director, me, and there's a coach in residence that all they do is work on your conscious leadership and your relationship with your co-founders. Because also, many companies run out of money or the founders give up, but also a lot of companies self-destruct because of founder disputes. And so this journey of frustration, of loss when you figure out that it's not working, founder disputes is very emotional. And it requires an intervention beyond just like grow more and here's a spreadsheet. It's the human aspect of it that we also care about a lot in Techstars.
Yeah, we keep hearing that a lot. A lot of our MDs end up being counselors and coaches and therapists, right?
I think if the work was only technical, I could do it in like 80% of my work is therapy and psychology, and 20% is actually technical.
And so obviously not everyone can go to your program and get all these cool benefits, but if you were to just kind of meet the founders, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of creating these systems themselves in their structures?
Well, I think the one advice that I would give that is very difficult to fix if you don't do it right in the beginning. I've done it, but it's very difficult. And that will have an impact for the next 10 years or more of your life, is if you're going to bring on a co-founder, it has to be somebody that has to have mutual respect, mutual admiration, and mutual trust. And typically, that requires, for those three things to be built up, it requires a previous relationship. I have seen, and in most cases, when there's a co-founder dating thing, or like I met a co-founder in some website, or I was looking for an engineer and I didn't know how to code, so I asked on some website for an engineer, they're my co-founder, or I'm a technical person and I need help sales, I just brought this person. Those usually do not work out. And the reason why entrepreneurs are going and just grabbing a co-founder that doesn't meet the requirement of mutual trust, respect, and admiration, because you need time to build that, is because they hear the advice of don't do it alone. Like, always have a co-founder, or we don't accept solo founders. In Techstars, we do accept solo founders. We don't want alone founders, like don't do the program by yourself. But you can have a team and we can help you build a team around you that doesn't have to be co-founders. Because it is hard. You need to delegate some of the work, take some of the burden, distribute it a little bit. But don't bring on somebody to marry you for the next 10 years if there's not that mutual trust, respect, and admiration, somebody you just met because it's what VCs wanted to see or an accelerator program wanted to see. I would much rather have a solo founder with very good team members, employees, than a group of 2 or a group of 3 that got together because it was convenient and that to fill out an application. They're more likely to break up and self-destruct. And not to go too much into the legal aspect of it, but if you found the right person, mutual respect, trust, and admiration, you still want to apply to you, to them, and every employee that you have, 12-month cliff, 4 years vesting, so that they're incentivized to at least stay a year. If they leave or you fire them before the year, they don't get any equity. If they stay the 12 months and 1 day, they get 25% of the equity that we're going to earn. And then from then on, for the next 3 years, they vest equity every month. That makes it so that if I'm your co-founder and I decide, you know what, I'm bored, I want to go back to corporate because being a founder is really hard, that's okay, it doesn't kill the company. I'm not taking 50% of the company with me after working with you for 6 months. So I think the right co-founding team or being a solo founder, that's the decision that is going to impact the next 10 years of your life. Not even just this company, just your life. I think that's step 1.
Yeah, and most founders think, okay, I know about the vesting, I know about these contracts, I'll do it on the next one, because that one's going to be the real serious one and the one that's going to grow. Not this one. This is just, I don't see myself doing this for 10 years, right? So they might sometimes forget. You talked about marriage. What about divorce?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about divorce. All right, yes. So it happens.
Do you outgrow each other?
Yes. And there can be a toxic way of doing the divorce or a mature way of doing the divorce. The toxic way is there's a dispute, and because I am a lazy worker, you decide to fire me, and I leave, and then I sue. Not because I think I'm going to win. It's just because I know that with litigation, you're not going to be able to race around. And if you're not able to race around, then your equity is going to be worthless. And I'd rather you make nothing and me make nothing than anybody make anything. That's a toxic and destructive way. And it happens a lot. There is cases like Snapchat. I forget, like a more recent one, like very recent. There's like the third co-founder, the second co-founder, people hadn't heard about. Oh, I think it was, I forget. Somebody recently sued the company saying, hey, I got cheated out of my shares. They lied to me and I signed a paper where I signed all my shares away. Or this was my idea, it's disappearing images was my idea and it's in an email. And in all of these cases, the companies have to settle in this tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars for that to go away. But that lawsuit didn't happen when the person left and they didn't think the company was going to amount to anything. It happened when the company is obviously a success, so now they're going to sue. To just be self-destructive, or at least negotiate a settlement. So what you want to do, whether you're departing or you're the one remaining, is you want a mutual release and non-disparagement agreement. Remember I said understand your contracts, don't just delegate. Yeah, this is the legal nerd in me. So the mutual release and non-disparagement agreement, it's mutual because in consideration for something, whether you vested the 12 months or the 4 years or not, whatever it is, in consideration for something, we agree, like the company and you if you're departing, or the company and me if I'm departing, that I will not talk poorly about the executives, the founders, the board members, or the employees, non-disparagement, and I will release any claims of litigation for anything that happened up until this point. With that piece of paper, when an investor asks, hey, so this 5% from for Jane Doe, like, who is Jane and where are they? Oh, no, they're a early co-founder. They're no longer involved in the company. They moved on to other projects. And here's our mutual release and non-disparagement agreement. And there's also an IP assignment so that you don't have the issue later on of now we need to make sure that the IP belongs to the company because they didn't sign anything. And that person can still lay a claim and sue the company for convenience. And if you're if you're the one leaving on your own volition or you got terminated, the mutual release, the non-disparagement, the mutual release is they're not going to sue you, the company's not going to sue you, but also the non-disparagement means when you start doing your next company or you go to your next job, guess who they're going to call for diligence? Your previous co-founder. And you might have hated each other, and you think that each of you is incompetent. You will not disparage. It's in that agreement. So it's the better for both parties, and this is where the therapist aspect comes of it, because it's very emotional, and people don't see through the logic. They just want to self-destruct if necessary.
And you have all those forms, contracts?
Your lawyers have those forms. I happen to have them too, but
yeah.
I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I am not your lawyer. Seek your own counsel.
Another commercial, though. There is a book by Techstars founders called Venture Deals, and this book really explains to you everything about your contracts and a lot of these things that Andres just pointed out. So it's available online, free course, also a lot of templates and stuff.
So good. Venture Deals, how to be smarter than your VC or your lawyer. Love it.
If you were to, one more. Have you dealt from your portfolio of companies, have you dealt a situation where the founder should and have sort of stepped down themselves because the company has now grown? What are some of the signs as a founder I should look out for me to go, you know what, maybe this is my time to kind of step back and hand it over to someone?
I think if you're no longer being fulfilled by what you're doing, it could be that you're not good at it, and then you hire great executives around you. But also, you can lose motivation. You've been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. You no longer want to keep optimizing an algorithm for music compression. Now you want to do something else, find a cure for cancer. That's fine. What I do not like is when a board decides to remove a CEO, founder CEO, to replace them with a professional manager. Because that usually happens when there's trouble and when the company doesn't have product market fit. And that professional manager that's coming in as CEO might have the very nice CV and pedigree and track record, but they don't have the vision and they don't have the deep customer understanding of deep customer pain. Their job is there to extract as much value as possible to sell the company and then move on to their next victim. So when I decided to do Techstars, despite all of my VCs telling me, oh, don't do Techstars, we just gave you $1 million and then $5 million. What do you need? Mentorship? We'll mentor you. You need office? Use our office. But the reason why I still decided to take the Techstars deal is because Techstars has 6% pre-money common stock. That is the same type of stock as an employee or another founder. So when push comes to shove, who do you want on your side? The ones aligned with investor stock or are they ones aligned with founder stock? And so when that we're founder-friendly VC is no longer founder-friendly when things go poorly, I would like to be on the side of the founder so that if they want to keep going with their company and run their company, how do we keep them running their company and build a great executive team around them? Because their job is vision, recruiting, and making sure there's money in the bank. That's it. If they no longer want to run the company, great, let's go find a CEO. But I really don't like it when they try to remove the founder CEO.
Right. But then also, I can also understand board's position because kind of, clearly the person is no longer sort of fitting or they're not willing and trying to do the analysis and get to the right point. I guess at that point, how can you help the founder instead of
removing them?
Yeah.
Anything but removing them. I think if the VCs just want to cut their losses and get anything out of it, fine, replace the founder. But we speak as founders. We have a community of founders. When a VC goes to makes you an offer because your round is oversubscribed because you went through a Techstars program or my program, you figured out a way to get up to subscribe, and you're checking diligence, they're going to talk to a founder where the company didn't work out. So even as an investor, when things go poorly, it's the founders. Like the best referrals I've had of companies that have made me a lot of money came from either the second try of the founder that had failed before or an introduction from a founder whose company didn't work out, but I was there at the end. I mean, everybody's there in the beginning, but who do they call when they have a week of runway? Me. Who do they call to figure out hey, it's the end of the world. How do I tell the other investors I just burned through all their money? Me. And I'm there at the end when other investors have caught their losses and ignore them. They're the ones referring founders to me. So I think there's 100 other things you can do before removing somebody, unless it's for cost. And that is they broke the law, embezzled funds, harassment. Okay, that's remove the CEO, founder CEO. But short of that, just build a better team around them, coach them, help them.
With 150 companies in your portfolio, how often are you available to them?
If you are a Techstars, except Founder Catalyst, but if you're a Techstars employee or team, I am not available right now. I am on paternity. But if you're a portfolio company, I'm 24/7 on WhatsApp, whenever you need me.
And how much text or message or inbound requests do you get?
From my non-portfolio companies, a lot. For my portfolio companies, not a lot. And people think that 150 company portfolio is overwhelming. Most VC funds have 20 companies per fund. It's not, because companies are in different stages. So they need different things at different times. And I haven't had the situation where so many founders need my time that I can't give it to them. I've had 3 founder breakups in the same week, but it was still manageable, right? It's 3 companies shutting down in the same week, but it's not so much that it's overwhelming because companies start graduating. And if they're truly able to successfully bring in board members that add value, which is another great book by Techstars founder Brad Feld, Startup Boards, highly recommended. When you have the right board, they graduate from me. And then they have board members whose job is to solve or help them solve their problems. It is when those fail, and then they come back to me.
All right, I'm going to pause here. Is there anything you wanted to share that I didn't ask before we open up the floor?
Product market fit is the only thing that matters.
Yeah. All right, we'll take questions from the floor, please. Anybody?
Thank you. So, Andres, what could you advise to seed stage startups to reach this fundability skill, solid fundability skill, even if they might be already have everything, product market fit, traction, revenue, but still not so attractive to tier 1, tier 2 VCs, or can't scale their funding to the next rounds. They just stuck.
Are you the CEO?
I'm co-founder.
Co-founder. What is the name of the company?
To scale, it's Web3 startup.
Okay. The CEO must...
No, I'm not CEO.
No, I'm saying.
But CEO is here as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the CEO quits the company. They have to quit the company because they're going to run a different company. They're gonna run, I forget the name, Capital. So to scale Web3 Capital. That is separate from your company. You're actually building the real company, the one that's getting to product market fit, retention, expansion of views, revenue, all that. But then the CEO is not going to show up to meetings anymore, not going to be in one-on-ones, not going to be in strategy meetings, not going to be in the stand-ups. They're gone. Because they're running another company whose customer is VCs. Their product is a data room and materials. 3 different pitch decks, 1 for email, 1 for presenting, 1 for leave behind. Financial models, go-to-market strategy, competitive analysis, a whole package. That is their product. Their go-to-market is going to be calendar density, meeting as many investors in as short amount of time as possible. Even if you have to engineer it artificially, synthetically, you might be starving for weeks or months before, but you still schedule everyone 6 weeks from now. You're desperate for money now, but you still schedule everyone 6 weeks from now for the same day or the same week. If you could only get 4 meetings with investors, you're meeting them in the same morning, back to back. And all of that work, if you spend 16 hours a day for a seed round or from a seed to seed, well, for an A round, it's going to take longer. But if you spend 16 hours a day for a seed round, is going to take around 3 weeks. For a pre-seed round, it can take 2 weeks. For an A round, it's going to take 5 weeks of just putting all this material together and process together before your first meeting. And then once you get to your first meeting, because you have the calendar density, you have engineered momentum, your preparedness is going to be 2 stages above you. So if you're racing a pre-seed round, you should have the materials of a Series A round. If you're racing a seed round, you should have the materials for a Series C round, so on and so forth. Because when an investor meets with you, they're going to have usually the same very shallow questions. Oh, what about your competitors? You're going to say, oh yeah, of course, our competitors, this and that, this is what we do different. And here's the 12-page competitive analysis. Oh, but what about customer acquisition cost? Yeah, our customer acquisition cost is decreasing because our retention is increasing. But here's our go-to-market strategy. 6 pages, go-to-market strategy. The idea is to come over-prepared and, in a way, overwhelm them with how prepared you are. Because you're going to deny them from the really shallow questions that they typically use to tell you, we'd love to see a little bit more traction. Keep us in the loop. Keep us in your updates. Cheering from the sidelines. You're removing all of those excuses that they have to not give you an answer. So that is only possible if the CEO is only doing that. If they're doing that plus running the company, is going to delay the process of fundraising and is going to cause you to lose momentum. So that's why earlier I said that you have to separate the actual building something people want from raising money.
And sometimes it gets delayed. People delay it. It's fine if that's how you are approaching it. If you have time and that's how you want to fundraise, you want to kind of take it easy, keep it open for a while, I guess.
I think if you want to raise money, then you as the CEO, you quit your company and you raise money. If you don't want to raise money, you don't take meetings. It's like, oh, so-and-so investor, like, we want to meet you, just build a relationship. Oh, I'm not raising. No, that's okay. We'd like to know the founders. Don't. Because that's their job. Their job is to meet with a lot of founders so they can put you in a CRM and they make a snap judgment at that moment. You get evaluated, even though you think you're not, because you're not, like, oh, it's just a social. It's not a social thing. It's not getting to know you. They're evaluating you. And they're putting some score, some priority in their CRM. So if you're not racing, don't entertain the meetings. Tell them, oh, we'd love to keep you on updates. And the moment we race, you're going to be the first one to find out. I tell that to everyone. But make them all feel special. So that when you do say, hey, we're racing, you're going to be able to create that calendar density and corral them into the same week or the same couple weeks, or however long it takes.
Maybe the second element is, so it's a full-time job to fundraise. It's a separate thing. The second skill set that I think a lot of founders, especially confident founders, don't pay attention to is ability to storytell. And it's so important because you can schedule those meetings, but if you suck at those meetings, you're going to waste your time. You didn't show your best side. You weren't able to demonstrate all those great things you've done. And that happens way too many times, not with new founders. Actually, it oftentimes happens more with the founders who are doing great with their products because their ego is so high, because they're so self-confident. That's why at Techstars Accelerator, even though the program is 3 months, last month is all about learning that pitch over and over again. You know, the deck that Andres just talked about, which is 12-page competitive. Well, how do you surface that that's the thing you need to produce? It's by pitching it to people, your mentors, your co-founders, and your advisors. That's how you surface, this is what I need to prepare. This is what I should have with me. This is how I should improve my pitch deck. A lot of what happens there just happens internally with their ego. Yeah.
And usually I see founders, they get, I tell them you have to get 99 no's. Like your job, go get 99 no's. Get rejected 99 times. And the 100th is going to be yes. And then everybody wants to be in your round. It's like, where were you 3 months ago? Too early? Well, what are you? Like now you're coming to the oversubscribed round. It's no longer too early. It was never too early. What determines their appetite is competition. And so usually at the 30th no, that's when founders get depressed. I'm never going to raise money. This is terrible. At the 50th no, they get good at no's. Like, oh yeah, I know. And then they learn how to segment. Okay, I know this type of investor is going to be good. This type of investor, whatever. And then they have mastered the natural sounding conversation that is all scripted, but for the VC, it sounds natural. It sounds like a natural conversation. But you've done it so many times, you know exactly when to do the pause, the dramatic pause, the silly joke, right? Like, and they love you, right? And you become desensitized to it so that by the time you get to the 99th no, you're ready for the yes.
It doesn't take to 30. They get depressed.
They get depressed right away.
way earlier, like 5 no's. What? We're never going to fundraise. We're wrong. We're done.
I think after you go through my program, your tolerance for depression goes a lot higher.
A lot higher, yeah. Okay, great. All right. Did that answer your question? Yes, please. Next question. Yeah.
Hello. Hey, Andres. Thank you so much. I'm Luca, the CEO of Retora. We're a B2B startup, so I'm curious, how different is cohort analyses for B2Cs and B2Bs? Because our cohorts consist of teams of users coming on at times, and engagement is different depending, within a team.
What problem are you solving and for whom?
So we're a sales enablement AI company, and we're helping cold callers specifically.
Perfect.
So
got it.
Business development folks.
Usage. So the thing that B2C and B2B companies have in common is usage. Mm-hmm. And you might have signing a deal or onboarding a customer. Like they signed up, they gave you their credit card, or they signed the contract. And then you have, they're paying you every month. Like the revenue, those are lagging indicators. It's too late. By the time you notice something's wrong, it's too late. So what you want to look at is usage. And if somebody hires or a company hires your platform and they're paying for it, but their sales team is not using it, they're eventually going to cancel. So what you want to measure in terms of retention, there has to be a moment in your app or in your service where it's that aha moment. So I don't know, when the lead says yes, when they respond to the email, whatever it is. The more that happens, the more they keep using it. So your obsession needs to be on how do I make that happen more often for my existing customers so that they retain. And then once I've nailed retention, how do I expand the use of my existing customers? Once I have nailed retention and expansion, how do I acquire more users that will have the same characteristics and will have the same behavior in my newer cohorts? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I'm curious because you mentioned segmenting as well, and then focusing on users that are using it a lot more. Do you look at that at a grander scale and look at the types of companies that you're working with and types of clients, or also the specific users within? Because we have decision makers that use the platform as well, and we have end users as well that use it as well.
So you have to look at both, because you have the economic buyer and then you have the user, which in your case it seems like they're separate.
Correct, yeah.
So before they're customers, you're trying to find the segment of possible customers that know they have the problem, they've already quantified the problem that they're having, and they were going to do something about it with or without you, so that you can ignore everybody else and focus on the ones that are going to convert the fastest. And then once they've started, you only count them for your accounting and your pitch deck. You can count somebody when they become a customer. But for your journey towards product market fit, you only count them when that aha moment occurs for their use, because different economic buyer, for the user. So when that aha moment occurs for the user, that's when that user was born. And only then do you start counting their frequency of use and their retention to expand, to retain it and expand it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Any resource you recommend, by the way, for sort of people familiarizing with North Star metrics, formulas, and kind of?
Yeah, so how to determine your core KPI. This is going to be very hard to write it down. It's my blog. It's Andres Barre, that's BRRE .to. That's my full name, Andres Baretto. So Andres.barre.to. There's an article there called Identify Your Core KPI. That one will help you find what is the aha moment, the event that you need to track. And then for cohort analysis, like the really advanced version, there's this article called The Quantitative Approach to Product Market Fit, which goes into way too much detail on the quantitative approach to product market fit. The simpler version is look for any tutorial. I prefer Tableau. You can use Looker, Power BI. I prefer Tableau. They should sponsor me. They don't sponsor. Let's get that deal. On how to do cohort analysis. The short version of it is you have all of the events, and then imagine as a spreadsheet, the next tab in the spreadsheet, you identify when they were born. So when was the first event? The next step in the spreadsheet is you compare the most recent event versus the first event. And so you count how many periods they've been alive, and you do that for everybody, and now you have cohort analysis. Very simple to explain, difficult to do, especially in a spreadsheet. But there's tutorials for it.
Hello, thank you very much for today. My name is Yassine Hadriwish. I'm the founder and the CEO of SL Plus Group. It is a people and business development in the managerial level. You'll be talking about product fit in the market, and of course we deeply understand our customers' pain, and of course we're executing very quickly and fast in the market. But here we're not talking about product, we're talking about service. Right? We serve our customers. It's B2C services method. We can say we are not too early, but it's a baby business school. And of course, we will not compete Harvard at the moment, but we'll be competing one of the leading business schools in the world, and at some point in the future. My question here is, we've been chasing VCs and, as a startup and investors for a quite long time, as we've founded in 2018. But as you mentioned, 99 attempts, but was no success, and the 100 will be yes. But even though there is no response from any VCs nor any investors, so maybe the process we're walking may be wrong, or maybe we have the pitches ready and everything in place, and the action plan, report and business plan, roadmap, it's all on the right directions as per the way we see it. And we have also consulted many people we know and partners we're working with, so everything is going fine. So even when we reach to the angels, so to have a response to the emails and every channel is possible to get in touch with. But still, we'll try to really raise capital, because we need an offices in place, and we need, of course, a system to be working on, scheduling appointments. But to reach out in there, it really looks impossible. We don't believe in impossible, of course. Everything is possible. But maybe the process we're working on that to reach somebody for a pitching or having a meeting with them seems really bit difficult at this stage, even for years now. So I'm just looking for solutions.
What are the objections that you hear from investors?
No response at all.
Zero. Okay. And you said it's a services business.
Exactly. It's a business services in the people and business development in a managerial level.
That's not something that VCs back.
Well, the point is, or the objective is to raise the capital with which we have the offices and a system in place that really help in a scale. Because we are running from 2018 and we have a retained customers because we work on a monthly and yearly membership. So everything is running smooth. Our customers are coming back, and we have a loyal customers for three major industries that we're working in. It's the retail, hotel businesses, and the airports and airline as well. So developing people from supervisor level to manager level to director level as well through a program that we're putting in place, and we've been seeing really satisfactions which help us keep moving. In the beginning, in 2018, I was working in a freelancing system, all people around the globe, because in different time frame from each country. So to make sure we are working around in 24 hours system. And we were growing slightly and steadily. So now we have partners and a team in place that are working all out in the country and working forward also to expand in the region. But still, I'm looking forward to raise the capital and having an investors and a VCs meeting to make sure to grow and scale at a high level.
So, I mean, it's very specific to your circumstances, right? But something that I have seen and have been successful in helping founders is it might be that you do have a venture scale business and it's packaged incorrectly for the customers of VCs, right? Like it might be the repackaging that you need to do, story, narrative, approach, market size. Or it can be that you do not have a venture scale business and you can make a lot of money and be very, very successful without having to share it with VCs, which is also something that is wonderful and better for most cases. And there's a small percentage of companies that have a non-venture backable but successful company that they can transform into a technology play that is venture backable. But they walk away from having a profitable business that you never have to share with anybody. And they jump into the venture world, and sometimes it works. Not every time. So you can be successful with VC, without VC, but it might be that you need to make a life choice of like what type of business do you want to build. And if it is the one that is venture backable, it's either repackaging or doing some sort of leap into something that VCs want as a customer base of your shares.
Easy to say, very hard to do. What he just said.
This is where the psychology and the therapy.
But I will say one thing, which is I've met many founders like you, your business, which is now trying to repackage. And what I would recommend is instead of trying to do it yourself, go to a program like his program or other programs where there's a curriculum. You go into the attitude, the mindset, you learn the lingo, you learn how to package your stories, you learn how to maybe even integrate technology if need be, etc. So that's why it's called accelerator. Fast way to accelerate that process, yeah. All right, one last question? Yeah, last one, all right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful discussion. So my question is, you said that sometimes you invest in companies who do not have revenue or do not have product market fit. So what I'm curious about is, what are kind of the predictive signals that you can find in a pitch that tells you, that is indicative that they will reach product market fit? Very quick second question. Do you think a company can achieve product market fit with 2 products instead of just 1?
So the second one, yes, but not at the same time. So you first get to product market fit with 1 product, and then when you've saturated the market, it is impossible for anybody new to use your product any further. They just physically cannot, that maybe I cannot physically order more food, right? Like, I can only eat so many times a day. Then you might think about, all right, how do I launch a product with this for the same segment, but now I'm going to do credit cards or buy clothes, and that's when you start expanding. But not at the same time. I haven't seen it. You might be the first one to do it. I haven't seen it. And then the first one, I completely forgot. Can you remind me the first question?
When you
how do I tell? Yeah. So
predictive signals.
So at the stage that I invest, which is pre-seed, founders are terrible with their pitches. It's just bad. So a secret that I'm sharing only with you guys and whoever's watching this video. Most of the time that we ask for a pitch in the selection process, you'll pitch for 5 minutes and then we'll go into questions. It is to be polite and so that you feel like you did your pitch, but most of the time it's terrible. It's still a great company and a great opportunity. So how I become good at my job is calibrating the quality of the pitch so that it's not too much of a distraction, positive or negative. Because you can also be great at pitching terrible business. I've had founders that they do not have product market fit. They have not identified their ideal customer profile. They are lost. But the way they pitch, man, and they do 1 meeting, $1 million raised per meeting. I kind of fall for that. I mean, very happy because that's my portfolio company, right? And that's when they're successful at separating getting to product market from raising money, right? They became very good at raising money. Now, I'm going to help them get to product market fit. So I become better at my job when I know how to do the equivalent of customer discovery with founder discovery so that I can determine how deep of an understanding do they have of their customer pain and how fast are they at executing. And the way that I do that is very similar to customer discovery. I don't ask yes/no questions. I don't ask questions that start with why, but rather I focus on past behavior, when, where, who, what, how. And tell me about the last time. Tell me how you do this and that. So by looking at the past behavior is how somebody that's terrible at pitching, extract the gold out of it. Or somebody that is great at pitching and maybe the business is not great or they don't have a deep understanding or they just don't have much, I'm able to look past the pitch on their past behavior to determine from their past behavior, are they fast at executing and do they have a deep understanding of customer pain? Now, the size of the market, that is also something that is not so cut and clear because the founder might be going after a market that is $2 billion. And I say that's not enough. The question is, how can you increase it? And maybe they can increase it to 20 billion if they go after a bigger segment or do something else. That's still not big enough. Because I want companies that can generate $1 billion in revenue. So if the whole market size is 20 billion and you're going to create $1 billion in revenue, that's going to be a very lower chance of you getting there. I want to see a $100 billion or $200 billion market. And then this is a mentality thing that I invest outside of the US and in the US. And I'm able to see the different mindsets. I see US founders, they go after ridiculous idea of a massive market. We're going to power the way that people experience the internet. That was my company. And then I see outside of US founders and say, we have this path, we can generate $100 million a year. And we can sell it for $2 billion. That's not enough. They're equally as good, but it was a mindset problem. So there's a question I have to help you think bigger, right? At a pre-seed stage, if I gave your company $500 million today so that you will invest in your own company, I mean, you can't spend it outside of the company. You can do whatever you want as long as for the benefit of the company over the next 18 months. So you have to spend $500 million over 18 months so that you're generating $1 billion in revenue. What do you build? And how is the world different? Typically, the answers I get back, oh, great, we'll go from MENA and we'll go to, like, I don't know, Southeast Asia, and then we're going to go to Latin America, take over Africa. Great. What do you do with the remaining 400 million? Oh, hire more engineers. Great. What do you do with the remaining 350 million? Oh, I hadn't thought about it. Right? So just by doing that exercise, I used to say, like, I give you $1 billion today, how do you, and then people are like, that's too much money. All right, fine, 500 million. Whatever you think about, and you're only limited by your vision, your imagination, your ambition. Whatever you think about, that's the big vision. But you need to believe it, because nobody else is going to. So if you believe it yourself, then you'll be prepared, you'll have the approach to product market fit, you have the right team, you're going to be able to convince customers, you're going to be able to convince employees, and of course, investors. I forgot where I started with this, but I hopefully answered your question.
And I think maybe it ties to an answer you gave earlier, which is venture capital is not always the right answer. It is, in fact, one of the harder ways to go for fundraising. I think especially being outside of the US, we should really look into, when we're in these frontier markets, this capital transformation happening, we have more access to traditional financing, I believe, and we should tap into those. It doesn't come with that baggage you just asked. They're not going to ask us to do $1 billion. They will be happy with 100 million.
I would be happy with 100 million if I didn't have to share it.
But your LPs won't be, so.
Well, if I was the founder, I'd be happy with a company that's 100 million. Yeah. So just for the quick math of the fund manager's math, if I have a $1 billion fund and I buy 20% of your company, after you raise multiple rounds of funding, my ownership in your company might be 10%. For me to make money, any one investment that I do needs to return the fund. So if I have a $1 billion fund and I own 10% of your company, when you exit, my 10% needs to be $1 billion. And then I start at zero because I gave that money to my LPs, my investors. Anything above that, I get some of it. I get 20% of it. And if I have a partner, I get 10% of that. So for me to make money, I need to invest in companies that are, when they exit, have the chance, even low probability, that my cut when you exit is $1 billion. And I just gave you $10 million. So that's a very steep curve that needs to occur in a portfolio of 20 companies I invest per fund for me to make money. So that's why investors are going to push you for, why don't you grow more? Right? And usually not as helpful as they want to be. So it's not always the best path.
All right. Thank you very much, Andres, for spending
having
time.
me.
Thank you all for joining us. Catch him.